one of Canada's largest alcohol and drug recovery centers. First elected to Ontario legislature in 1995, White has been re-elected 3 times, in 1999, 2003, and most recently, 2007. Over the past 14 years, he has also served Ontario as Government House Leader, Chair of the Management of the Cabinet, and Minister of Energy. White brought meaningful change to Ontario electricity sector, fostering a culture of conservation, while ensuring a reliable, sustainable, diverse, and affordable power supply. Our government's 2009 budget, to me, is the accumulation of White's experience and value. So without further ado, please put your hands together and welcome my friend and colleague, the Honorable Dwight Duncan.
Delightful for me to be here today with my colleagues Michael Chan, Risa Maridi, and Helena Jacek. Helena, I don't know if you've ever told anybody this, but she actually lived down the street from me a number of years ago when she was Assistant Medical Officer of Health down in Windsor. And so, in spite of my warm friendship with these other 2 characters up here, Helena and I go back quite a long way. It's great to be up in Markham today I should say, and to be in York Region to meet with all of you, and to talk to you for a few moments about the budget and what was in the budget and why we did the things we've done. I'm not going to speak too long so that we can leave more time for questions and answers, but I do want to spend a few moments just trying to put into context for you why we've made the choices we've made. And Michael referred to the crisis in the world economy. You know, it's interesting. Here in Ontario, when we see what's happening in the automotive sector, the financial services sector, it's affecting all of us. And we don't know where it's all going to land when we're through this. So we looked at the options that were available to us as a government. And I want to remind you that we have spent the last 5 years making enormous investments in public health care, improving our education system from the most junior grades right through postgraduate work, by making enormous investments in infrastructure, which are already in the ground and being built. And so, in order to continue to offer Ontarians the kinds of public services they've come to rely on and expect, we had to look at things very differently. We had to say to ourselves, how are we going to get through this? And when we get through this, and we will get through this, what is it going to look like? How are we going to keep up with the rate of growth in healthcare expenditures? How are we going to be able to make post-secondary education more accessible to all Ontarians? How are we going to make our economy greener? And those are very difficult challenges, but they are challenges that we have to meet. And we have to meet them head on. How do we deal with rising unemployment? How do we deal with the consequences, of a slowing economy? And so now is not the time for timidity. Now is not the time to sort of sit back and just let the status quo continue. It called for a very dramatic change. And then we looked at this in terms of what's happening today and tomorrow, the immediate term. And then we said, what about the longer term? In the next 4 weeks, we could see the bankruptcy of 2 of the 3 Detroit 3. They may get out of it, they may not. I was reminded again the pervasiveness of the automotive sector when I saw the numbers that say that Magna is the largest employer in the York region. So this isn't about Oshawa, it's not about Windsor, it's about Ontario, it's about Toronto, and we have to be prepared. What about those families that have lost a job or fear for their job? What can we do? And so we took sort of a two-stage approach. In the short term, we're investing $34 billion over the next 2 years in new infrastructure. And a lot of that money will come to this area. Because it's not just because it's the fastest growing area anywhere, which it is, but because it will also help us get through this. Of that $34 billion, some $32.5 billion is for infrastructure. Roads, sewers, bridges, schools, hospitals. And your priorities will be our priorities. I'm delighted to see so many municipal representatives here today. They are truly our partners, and I want to salute all of you for the good work you do in very difficult times and difficult circumstances. So, we estimate that $32.5 billion on infrastructure will create some 300,000 jobs across the province. Good paying jobs. Jobs that will put a paycheck into people's wallets. Those people will go out and spend that money, at least some of them we hope, to help get the economy back into a confident mode, back into a growth mode. And that's a big question. Everybody says to me, well, when do you think this is all going to be over? And the truth is, we don't know. The analysts, the economists, the wise men, the gurus, have all been wrong. One bank analyst said that trying to project where the economy is going to be somewhere down the road is like trying to sell your house when the kitchen's on fire. But you have to make an attempt. Now, we believe that the growth in this economy will come back next year. We don't know how much. What we do know is this. In order to invest in our hospitals, in our schools, it's not simply a matter of getting back to growth. We have to have more robust growth, stronger growth, to help our municipalities, our schools and hospitals with their infrastructure and operating needs. We simply have to build a stronger economy moving forward. And that underpinned the larger portion of our budget, which I think most people have been talking about, and that is probably the single largest, most major tax reform package in the history of the province. We are doing three things. One, we're creating a single sales tax. Right now we have two. We have the GST and the provincial sales tax, the PST. We're joining every other major country in the OECD, save and except the United States. We're joining 4 other provinces in creating a single sales tax. The creation of that single sales tax will make our businesses more competitive, our exports less expensive, and will help this economy into that next stage of growth. And it's not easy. We recognize that. We recognize that there are a number of services and goods that will now be subject to the single sales tax that weren't subject to the provincial sales tax. So we've provided a number of exemptions. And those exemptions are in part designed to help consumers with the transition. But more important, we have a package of personal tax cuts worth $10.6 billion. Everyone in this room will see their personal taxes cut. 93% of Ontarians will pay less overall in taxes than they do today. The other thing, we have a transition fund where all Ontario families earning less than $160,000 a year will receive $1,000 in transition payments over the first year of the single sales tax. And let me tell you how a single sales tax works, because there's a lot of misunderstanding about this. When a business makes a product, they buy things that go into that product. They pay the sales tax on everything that they put into that product, just about. Some things are exempt, but very few. So in fact, by the time the consumer sees the end product, they are paying sales tax on top of sales tax on top of sales tax. And what this tax does is it refunds that tax to the business. So if I'm a clock manufacturer, for instance, and I buy all kinds of parts that go into my clock, I will no longer pay the sales tax on those parts. I will get that back. So what does that do? That will reduce my cost of production. And that means I can sell that clock to you for less money, or I can reinvest the money in the business. And in the case of the other provinces that have harmonized, those price decreases were passed on within anywhere, depending on which study you read, from 1 to 3 years. And it also lessens the cost of that product for export. And remember, we are exporters. We are traders in the world economy. Whether you're building auto parts at Magna or working in any other number of organizations in this region, chances are you export. And that's why the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, the C.D. Howe Institute, and some 30 other organizations, business organizations, consuming organizations, have applauded us for doing this. The final part of the tax package was a dramatic cut in corporate taxes. We're taking the general corporate tax rate from 14% to 10%. That's almost a 33% cut. We're taking the manufacturers and processors rate from 12% to 10% to help those businesses get back on their feet. If those businesses don't get back on their feet, we won't have more jobs. If we don't have more jobs, we don't have more revenue. If we don't have more revenue, we can't make those new investments in healthcare and education. And that's what it's all about. So the transition period will challenge all of us. It'll challenge our businesses to pass on their savings to consumers. It challenges government to make better use of the tax resources we have, to make the kinds of investments that you demand in our healthcare and education systems. And it challenges all of us to work together as we come out of this decline in the economy. And make no mistake, folks, we will come out of this and we will be bigger and we will be better and we will be stronger than when we went in. So this isn't about one interest group or one business lobby or one community. It's about us. It's about Ontario. Last week, the Vancouver Sun ran a lead editorial, called upon the British Columbia government to follow Ontario's lead, otherwise Ontario's going to surpass British Columbia. And we will, mark my words. The Globe and Mail this weekend warned the government of Quebec that if they don't do the same sort of thing Ontario did, new jobs, new investments are going to migrate to Ontario. And they're right. That's why we did it. And I recognize the challenge and the anxiety around these changes. And that's part of the reason I'm here today, to hear your questions and comments. We've also, by the way, I see my friend Dennis Bailey in the back of the room from the York Region Community Legal Clinic, $5.2 billion investment in poverty reduction in this budget. The largest in our history. First government to set a target for poverty reduction, and now we're following up. And that's important because, as Premier McGuinty says, all of us have to share. All of us have to have the opportunity to grow in this economy. You know, we're raising the child benefit to $1,100 a month, 2 years ahead of schedule. We are raising welfare rates, ODSP rates, by 2%. We have the largest single sales tax credit now in Canada. And we're investing more than $1 billion in affordable housing. There's more to do, as there always will be. But we think that's a darn good first step. And so we've taken the steps we've taken, and we want to work with every community, every group, as we transition to this new system. When we're through, we'll be better positioned to get this economy back firing on all 8 fuel-efficient cylinders. No more 12 cylinders. And this region, which is a beacon of light to the entire province in terms of growth, in terms of quality of life, will see those benefits as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. I want to thank my colleagues for helping to organize this. I'd be delighted to answer whatever questions you have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dwight, so much. It's a real pleasure to have you here with us in York Region. As Dwight's alluded to the fact that we've known each other for quite a long time, I do every now and again get in touch with old friends in Windsor because I worry about Dwight. I worry about Sandra. Windsor, as we all know, has suffered some of the most crushing manufacturing job losses. And you know what my friends tell me? They tell me, don't worry about Dwight, don't worry about Sandra. These guys really care about their community. They listen, they do the very best they can. And so for us, my colleagues, Reza and Michael, we of course have the privilege to be with Dwight, pre-budget consultations where he always takes copious notes, in caucus, which can get lively. He listens, he is unflappable, he brings logic and reason to the discussion, and of course in the House, where again, I would say imperturbable, his vision is clear, and he knows how to get us to that recovery economy. So it's a huge pleasure to say thank you to Dwight. Now it's my duty to moderate the question and answer period. I'm sure it will be less difficult than the speaker in the House during question period. But we do have just a couple of rules. Please give your name, your organization, if you represent an organization, 1 question per person, and please use the microphone. Daniel, all in black, has the microphone, and he will bring it to you. Dwight, I just said you're imperturbable. I have to tell you, York Region, 1 million strong, the people in this room, as I look around, represent just about every sector, and these are the people.
Okay. Thank you for taking my question. My name is Patrick O'Hanlon. I'm president of Angus Glen Developments and Kylemore Homes. I'm also here with a couple of my colleagues, the president of Bill, Leith Moore, and the president of OHBA, Frank Giannone. Overall, our industry, I've never seen any backlash on anything. The size and scope of harmonization. We represent 75,000 homes in Ontario and 40,000 of them a year in the GTA. We represent 360,000 jobs. How could you mess with our industry at this time? In your speech, Mr. Minister, now is not the time. $400,000 does nothing for us in the GTA. Our average price is $468,000 for a low-rise home. In Markham, I did a chart, and Helena asked me to do this in percentages, which I did. In Markham, 78.75% of our product will be hit by the harmonization tax. In Aurora, 87.5%. In Newmarket, 60%, and in Richmond Hill, 87% of new homes. In Ajax, that goes down to 23.6%. York Region cannot afford this tax. Our profits are negligible right now, and we have to add anywhere from $30,000 to $70,000 onto a new home under $1 million. How can we compete with resales who do not have this tax? How many jobs do resales create versus new homes? The new home average is anywhere from 3.8 to 6 jobs per home. How do we save 360,000 jobs versus the 4,000 jobs in GM and Oshawa? How do we feed the rental market when a landlord has the full 8% hit? 80% of all our condo sales go towards the rental pool. This again will stop growth. Oh yeah, growth. Forget intensification of brownfields. If we have to pay the land prices in the GTA, our product on a 1,000 square foot apartment will be roughly $500,000 and taxed at $30,000 alone on harmonization. On top of the already $75,000 of taxes on GST,
Patrick, could you come to your question, please?
I'm on my last page. Housing is a manufacturing industry. Why under HST is it the only employment industry that sees its costs go up, while all other manufacturers see their costs go down? Mr. Minister, we're facing enough challenges, as you say. We in York Region cannot afford this tax. I urge you to work together with our industry. You cannot be stronger without us.
First of all, Patrick, we are working with you. We had a meeting last week, as you know. The housing industry actually grew in the other provinces that harmonized. We have created the single most generous tax credit for new home purchases in the country. And again, I want to stress that the advice we've had to do this has come from virtually all sectors in the economy. We have been working with you on transition rules. The 400,000 covers, I believe, close to 80% of new home sales in Ontario. I recognize that's higher in some parts of the province than others. This will not be the end of the home building industry. People will still buy homes. We're giving enormous tax cuts to individuals to help them, and we're giving enormous tax cuts to corporations such as yours to help transition through this. If we are going to build a bigger and stronger economy, we have to have the kind of tax reform that we have put forward in this package. We've had a number of meetings with the home builders. The most recent one, I think, was Friday on the transition rules. I hope we'll continue to work together. This single sales tax is coming into being. It's being well managed in our view, and the corporate tax cuts and individual tax cuts will not only help transition, but in our view, will help stimulate growth, not only in the housing sector, but right across the economy. Because this is about growth in the economy, jobs in the overall economy, and making our exports and all of our industries more competitive. We believe this is the right answer, and I do look forward to continuing to work with you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Minister. My name is Michael Gray. I'm from Richmond Hill Center for Performing Arts. Excuse me. Just could you comment on how the HST will impact ticket pricing for performing arts events and sporting events?
It will apply to those areas that the RST already applies to. And so, like the Place des Arts, Montreal, and a variety of other facilities across the country, you will see that. What we're hoping is that more people will take advantage of the savings they'll see in their personal taxes to avail themselves of facilities such as yours. And in terms of the specifics, as you know, we have a number of rules on the RST that affect different size venues and different types of venues. We're working through those transitional issues with the Canada Revenue Agency. And so the final clarity of that will be probably another 2 to 3 months off. But overall, we think this will give us the kind of growth in the economy that we need to be able to support the arts in a better way than we've been able to up until now.
Noor.
Thank you, Dr. Jimenez Jabber. My question is more, sort of it's related to budget as well, but in terms of, do we really understand the flaws in our economic system that has caused our meltdown? Because if we are putting all these measures in place, and as you said, we don't know where the economy will land in a year or 6 months from now, then sort of we are guessing one solution, not really knowing how much and what kind of impact it will have. But if we understand the flaws or the root causes of the problem, then certainly we have a better understanding, and then I think we can put the things in place. So what government is doing in terms of making sure that those flaws that have caused this meltdown doesn't really happen again in the coming years.
Well, you can talk to, Noor, you can talk to 12 economists and they'll tell you 12 reasons, different reasons why things are the way they are. I mean, a lot of this has to do with the United States. I mean, our economy, the Ontario economy, is very closely linked to the American economy, and that's why, you know, we're seeing such a difficult downturn here in Ontario compared to some other provinces. And, you know, you look at all the reasons, you know, the subprime lending market in the United States, the deregulation of the banking industry, and a number of other factors. We have more robust regulation in our financial services sector. But our immediate goal is to get people back to work. And that's why we have this $32.5 billion in infrastructure. And frankly, that's a relatively small amount. I mean, I forget the figure, but if households in the U.S., if their consumption declined by, I think it's 0.5%, it would more than double Obama's entire stimulus package. So you see the order of magnitude we're on. So it's about building confidence in the future. And in the future, we are creating a much more competitive tax structure. We'll have among the lowest corporate taxes in the country, and indeed certainly in North America. For instance, in the United States, the corporate tax rate, combined corporate tax rate in most states is 38%. When we're fully implemented, it'll be 25%. We're already below the Americans, but this will put us that much below. So there's a variety of these things, and we believe that a competitive tax structure is absolutely essential, not just for our businesses, but more importantly for our government's ability to be able to continue to provide quality education and quality health care.
There was a hand in Larry.
Larry Grossman from the York Central Hospital. I'd like to liken what you're dealing with, make a clinical analogy that I'm familiar with and Helena will be familiar with. And it's like a doctor trying to deal with an inveterate smoker. I can invest all sorts of money in trying to get this individual better, antibiotics, putting him in intensive care unit, putting him on a ventilator, etc. But ultimately, if the patient doesn't change his or her lifestyle, my efforts are not going to succeed. And I think this is a little bit related to the previous question. How much of what you do by stimulating the economy, the tax reforms, etc., is really going to have an impact if our cultures doesn't change, if our values don't change, if our sense of accountability doesn't change, if our productivity doesn't change, etc., etc.?
First of all, the Canadian situation is markedly different from other economies. We have a higher savings rate. Governments overall, before we went into this, were in better shape in terms of balanced budgets. terms of deficit to GDP, debt to GDP, all of those kinds of things. We do have to improve our productivity. One of the best things we can do to stimulate that is have a more competitive tax system, a system that doesn't tax income and investment as much as it taxes consumption. That's why every country in the OECD, save the United States, has moved to what they call a value-added tax, or what we're calling a single sales tax. So that's extremely important. That's why 4 other provinces have moved in that direction as well. So we can, in fact, create an environment. One of the best things we can do is to invest in our post-secondary education in our schools, because one of our great competitive advantages is our workforce and the people who make up this room and make up our entire workforce. But we need the revenue to do that. And so the kinds of investments we've made in healthcare and education are very important to the future of our economy and are, I think, among the factors that lead people to invest here, to live here. And we have to be able to keep pace with that growth. And one of the big questions outstanding that governments over the years have avoided dealing with, and that was our tax structure, the competitiveness of our tax system. So we think we're dealing with that appropriately. You're right, it involves the solution, in my view, to the economic challenge, not only in Ontario and Canada, but around the world, isn't going to come from government. It's going to come from entrepreneurs. It's going to come from communities. It's going to come from people with ideas and the courage to move those ideas forward. I was listening this morning to the co-founder of Home Depot on a television program. He said, you know, they opened their first big stores just before interest rates went up to 22%. And yet they came through it, grew, thrived. Now, as you know, massive publicly traded company. We have very historically low interest rates. We don't know where those are going to go in the future. There's a risk of inflation in the future. There's also a risk of disinflation or devaluation. But the plan we're laying out, we believe, will serve us well in any of those circumstances. But to your point, I think you're right. The real solution, the real answer to these challenges, we can create an environment, but the real answer is going to come from companies like BlackBerry and people who take risks and make investments. And there are a lot of them here. That's why, you know, as I look at this room and I see the diversity in this community, that's one of our great strengths. We have open doors, new people, bringing them here, bringing their desire to succeed, their desire to invest. That's where the answer is going to come from at the end of the day. It's those kinds of cultural issues that are truly important. But I do think we have a good foundation to build on.
I think we just have time for a couple more. Mario Rocco.
Minister, thank you for giving us $670 million on March 24th, 2006. That's over 3 years ago. Yet the subway minor contract had been given out after 3 years. So my question to you is this. Can your office or the Ministry of Infrastructure or Municipal Affairs get involved a little more with the region of York and the city of Toronto to make sure that the subway can start sooner? Again, contracts have been given, but the big work has not started. The $32.5 million you have approved in the latest budget, unless the province move the files, those dollars are not going to be invested soon. Please do something about it. Thank you.
Mario, you're absolutely right. And Mario is pointing out that in my 2006 budget, we provided the funding for the extension of the York subway up to Vaughan. And I, for the life of me, can't understand why we haven't started that project. And there are all kinds of impediments. I don't want to get into, you know, why it hasn't started, go through all that. But the short answer to your question is yes. We've already become involved, my office directly, and we want to work with the region and with the community to get this thing going. And that's the real challenge. You're right, Mario, on all of this infrastructure money. It doesn't do us any good if we announce the money and then it doesn't get out and go into construction. In fact, we were having this discussion in the lead-up to the budget. That was one of my big concerns. George Smitherman, our Minister of Infrastructure Renewal, is working with the federal government along with our municipal partners. I expect by the end of this month we'll have clarity from the feds on the kinds of projects they're going to invest in. And we've already, by the way, got a lot of projects ready to go that are a much smaller scale than that. But we're looking at every aspect of how we get money out the door, the processes, the permitting, all of those sorts of things to make sure that we can get this going sooner rather than later. It's like you, I'm very frustrated by that delay. I mean, that was the signature piece of my 06 budget. And it's not much of a signature if it doesn't get done soon.
Time for one last question. Front and center here.
Thank you. I'm Don Flynn. I represent MB, the magazine for business. I have one question. How will this harmonization of tax affect tax-exempt periodicals, and will this provincial tax now apply to advertising?
It applies to all those goods and services that are covered by the GST, unless there's a specific exemption granted. I'll get back to you on the specifics of the advertising, because I'm at the top of my mind, I'm not clear on that, and there are some rules we have to be compliant with. But what we know is this, that it'll be cheaper to produce those magazines with this tax system. We think it will be, and we can talk about that, Don. But overall, more people will buy magazines because they'll be paying less in taxes. The broad package, and those input tax credits that all businesses will get, will have that opportunity. I should point out, too, we also provide a number of tax incentives within our tax code to assist a range of cultural organizations. I'm not sure how they would apply specifically to your magazine, but this is the right course for Ontario. It's not about one sector or the other. It's about our macroeconomic performance. I think we all have to be prepared to move to implementation. I'd be happy to explore those issues on advertising. I can't answer right now today, but certainly be happy to follow up with you on those.
Canadian Humanities Society, and I'm representing this CHS office we have here in the New York region. We represent areas from Newmarket to Richmond Hill to the Markham area. My concern is specifically for people with disabilities and more so for people who have a hearing loss. A number of whom are experiencing a great level of layoffs from the manufacturing sector, as well as the seniors population that we're seeing such a growth in. And my concern is, well, if you could share with us what it is that you plan on doing for social services and ensuring that the services are available to these people who are having even more of an effect because of job losses to them. And we're going to see more of a demand for social services. So what are you going to do for the social services to support them in this greater demand?
Well, we've raised OW benefits by 9% since we took office, sorry, 11% now since we took office. There was an increase there. The first thing we do have to do is we have to get fairness for Ontario on employment insurance benefits. On average, Ontarians get $4,000 per year less in employment insurance benefits than Canadians in other parts of the country, and far fewer of us qualify for employment insurance benefits. I think the number of those who become unemployed, only about a third of them even qualify for employment insurance here in Ontario, which is far lower than other provinces. So we're going to continue to work with the federal government to try to get fairness in employment insurance benefits. We have taken a number of steps through this budget that are designed specifically to assist people on, we're the first government to set a poverty reduction target, and we're moving towards it. As indicated, we've provided $5.2 billion in total for that. We have the most generous sales tax credit now in the country. Any Ontarian earning less than $80,000 a year, and that obviously includes those on social services, will actually be paying a lot less in taxes as a result of this package of tax changes that we're bringing about. We now have the lowest tax rate on the first bracket in the country. We reduced that by some 17%. That in turn will assist those people, not necessarily on OW or ODSP, but it will certainly help those people who are making very modest incomes. But as you know, welfare was cut some 21% under the previous regime. We have raised rates overall by more than 11% since coming to office, and we've set out a very aggressive poverty strategy. By the way, there's another, in this year's budget, another $1.2 billion for affordable housing initiatives, which are going to be targeted, some of which are going to be targeted specifically at seniors and those with disabilities, Gary. So there's always more to do, but I think in the context of the time and circumstances, we have taken some fairly dramatic steps to move forward.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to echo on what my colleagues and good friends, Minister Chan and MPP Helena Jasic mentioned, and thank Minister Duncan for taking the time out of his very busy schedule and attending this York Region Forum on Economy. I especially thank the Minister for making the initiative and designing, preparing and presenting this very budget which addresses the challenging time which our economy is facing with and the international economy actually is facing with. We know that the world economy is in recession. This is no secret. And the root of this, as we all know, is out of the boundary of our country, Canada. And this budget was especially designed to address those needs of this specific challenge which our economy and other world's economy is facing with. As we all know, the world is now is global, it's a very, very small village. Whatever happens in one part of the world in terms of economy affects the other parts immediately, and no country is immune of any ups and downs in the economy, and we in Canada and Ontario is not an exception for this. And finally, I thank you so much for taking the time and attending this forum, and I wish you all the best. And I thank the Minister and also my colleagues who are here, and also our staff who helped organize this event. There will be a media scrum in the hallway. If people from media they would like to talk to the Minister, I'm sure he will be available for a few minutes to answer a question from the media. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Just wait for Helena.
We got the other members there.
Helena, I'll call them. Michael, call Helena.
Just now the question is about the city of Toronto and GTA has a higher price of housing. Do you think that the possibility of like different region, the different tax exemption?
We're going to continue to work on the transition rules, but the figure that's been the 500,000 figure, we believe will capture most homes, and we have the most generous new home tax credit. Anybody buying a home under 400,000 or less is not going to pay any additional tax, and the builders themselves have indicated there's about a 2% hidden tax built into their product, so they'll be able to have those savings as well. So we think the combination of the credit, the fact that people have more money in their pocket will in fact stimulate new home sales.
Do you think it creates an unfair situation for the GTA?
No, it's been designed to be very fair. We don't agree with their numbers on average costs in the North Toronto region and so on, and we're going to continue. We had just had a meeting yesterday on the transition rules with the home builders. We'll continue to work with them. But listen, we are moving forward with this. This is in the best interest of the Ontario economy. It'll create a more efficient, productive economy, and it will in fact, the experience in every other jurisdiction that's harmonized, New Brunswick and other places, have new home sales have actually gone up, even in the face of economic challenge. So we'll continue to work with them, but this is going to happen, and we're going to, and we've got a whole package of tax cuts to assist consumers and businesses to transition through this.
I know that the government doing a lot to stimulate the economy, and so you have just mentioned that you have putting a lot of money in the infrastructure in the future to create the jobs. But I think many of the workers, they wanted to maintain the job, what they are working right now. So how is the government to maintain the job?
We won't be able to maintain all existing jobs. The reality is the economy is changing. One of the reasons we're investing in infrastructure is to help transition over the next 2 years. We're also investing an enormous amount of money in skills training and retraining to help workers who lose their job in one industry to get opportunities in another industry and to have more opportunity to transition. So there's going to be enormous change in the economy in the next 10 to 15 years. Just as there have been, most people don't realize this, manufacturing has been declining in Ontario for almost 40 years. And we are now, one of the reasons we're investing in post-secondary education, in skills training, is to help workers transition from the economy today, the jobs they're in today, to the jobs of the 21st century. 15 years ago, there was no BlackBerry, there was no RIM. I mean, if you look around Markham and see all of the businesses that are here that are either manufacturing or providing a service that wasn't provided even 10 years ago, you see how the economy is changing. Part of our challenge is to help folks with that transition into the new economy.
Most workers are wanted to retraining, that they wanted to change their job.
Yep.
Any money putting on the training or for the training for the newcomers?
We put almost $700 million additional dollars into this budget for that. Last year we created something called Second Career, which is now really taking off. This is for people that actually want to come out of the workforce and go back to school for up to 2 years, provide, I think, up to $28,000 to help them get a new skill, pick up a new skill. That was something that was absent from our training mix. Plus, we've increased the apprenticeship tax credit to businesses to encourage them to hire more apprentices. We've more than doubled the number of apprenticeships in Ontario since we took office, and those kinds of investments will help workers. I don't want to diminish the challenge people face when they lose a job, and that's very real, and that's one of the reasons we're pushing the federal government so hard in terms of being fair to Ontario on employment insurance.
So Ontario just got the first equalization payment in history. Do you think how many more years Ontario will keep getting that?
Well, we paid ourselves that equalization payment. The equalization formula has been so skewered or gerrymandered over the last few years that it really doesn't reflect relative economic strength. What I know is this: by taking the steps we have taken in this budget, it will improve our ability to get out of that program, which we're paying for. But it will help get this economy back to the point it needs to be at to lead growth in Canada, to be the strongest economy in Canada again.
So what's the estimation of?
I don't want to give you an estimate because the federal government changes the formula so often. I mean, we may, it's just, it doesn't really, it's not what it was originally designed to do. What it does now is it was originally supposed to equalize tax bases so that different provinces could provide same level of service. But over the last 40 years, so many governments have given special one-time deals over here and over there and different other provinces. It really doesn't reflect that reality anymore. And we likely, like I say, we're paying ourselves, so it's kind of an awkward situation that way.
So we'll be seeing more layoffs like job freeze in the future. If more opposition against the HST voice from the community, will the government consider delaying the implementing of the tax HST?
No, we think the implementation of the tax will help us get back to a growing economy. And I remind you, it's a tax reform package. Enormous corporate tax cuts, personal tax cuts. 93% of Ontarians will be paying less taxes when this tax is fully implemented. And I should also point out that the biggest beneficiaries of some of those tax cuts will be companies here in this region that will, and that's why the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, a whole variety of business organizations have spoken very strongly in favor of Ontario taking this step.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.